Every day, people want to get up. They want to go to if they want to go to work. They want to have a good job. They want to travel on safe roads. They want their kids to be in good schools and be safe and come back and raise their family, have a good job, set a little bit aside for the future, maybe go on a vacation. And I think that's what we want for everybody. If they want to know that their parents, as they get older, are going to have access to good health care and be taken care of. They want to know that their children are going to be safe in their schools and in their community. And they want to know that if they're going to have children, that they're going to have access to good maternity care. So we're going to work on all those issues as we have in the past and continue to push and go forward.
Welcome to Talking with Doyle, the podcast that gets State Representative Doyle Heffley talking. Doyle, we're here in the Carbon County Cocktail Lounge. It's a little bit of a mouthful for me to get out, but you are scheduled to be back in Harrisburg as a member of the House in session in late January. What are some pieces of legislation you're looking forward to when you come back to Harrisburg?
Well, I mean, we're going to have, I think, 1 week, maybe two, of session before the governor's budget address, in which he'll outline his priorities for the 26-27 budget. So that's going to be important. But really, when you look at it, what are the number one issues? And we're out in the community all the time. And what are the number one issues? What are the concerns that we hear? And I think, the Democrats have dubbed this affordability, right? And look, there is a thing right now with how affordable things are. Energy, for example. This is why we fought so hard last year to get Pennsylvania out of RGGI. When you look at the cost of energy, what's driving the cost of energy? So people call my office all the time and complain about the PPL bill. Okay, PPL doesn't not produce electricity. They just distribute it over their lines. PJM, the Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland Authority, they actually buy power and supply it to the grid. The reason that electricity rates are going up is because we continue to shut down power facilities. I think we said it before that Virginia imports 34 or 36% of the electricity. They shut down a lot of plants and didn't increase production, so now they have to buy more electricity from Pennsylvania, so they're bidding against Pennsylvanians for that electricity. Same with New Jersey. Now, Pennsylvania, we've always been a net producer of electricity and exporter. It's one thing that we make. It's okay. But since Governor Wolf had put us into RGGI for the last, I think, 9 years now since he did that, and Shapiro continued that, we haven't seen any new build-out of infrastructure for baseload generation, no new natural gas. Remember, a couple years ago, energy prices were very low because you've seen everybody building natural gas generating facilities. Well, that had stopped because of that looming threat of the $2.5 billion tax that the governor was trying to push. So we're hopeful now that we can get more production. We need to produce more electricity, right? Wind farms, solar panels, heavily subsidized. Unfortunately, they do not produce base load. Now, I have one of my Democrat colleagues that, get this, wants to build massive battery facilities. If you think data centers or warehouses is what you don't want in your community, wait till you see the size and depth and the environmental impact of these battery centers that they have to build to store the power that's produced by wind and solar so they can produce a base load. However, we still don't produce enough power by wind and solar to actually have a surplus to charge the batteries. That's a whole nother debate. But that's just going to drive up costs. We need to focus on bringing down energy costs. We've seen the price at the pump come down because of some changes in federal policy. But electricity rates impact everything, the lights in this room. So everybody that makes anything, produces anything, ships anything, everything's made by electricity. We're relying on that. So driving up the cost of electricity. It's not about the distributors. It's about bad policy that's blocking energy production in this Commonwealth. We held several policy hearings, and if anybody wants to dive into the Republican Policy Committee to really get a good handle on what's going on. So when you look at affordability, that's one of the number one cost drivers is electricity rates, which are caused by bad policies in not building and increasing base load, natural gas, coal, nuclear facilities that can power the next generation. It's not about data centers. They haven't built any data centers in any parts of Pennsylvania yet. They're coming, right, to areas that can accommodate them. We're not talking about cutting down, hundreds of acres of pristine forest, but old brownfields where we can have these located would be great. But that's not what's costing you your electricity. It's because of the lack of production when it comes to building out new energy producers. So that's one of the number one cost drivers. The other is housing. And we have several pieces of legislation I actually introduced last session and have them reintroduced this session to deal with UCC building codes. The governor just adopted the new codes, which then drive up the cost of every type of building that you do, international standard building codes. And then you have a lot of these townships and municipalities which have overzealous zoning officers and building code officials which almost prohibit people from developing property for residential housing. And then you have a housing shortage. When you have that housing shortage, you have more people looking for a house. I mean, the average age of a young person that buys a house now is almost 40 years old. And because there's just not enough houses out there, and the cost of housing is crazy. So changing some of the how we enforce or how we do zoning and building codes in this Commonwealth will bring down the cost of homes. We need to build new homes. You look at homes in areas that have been blighted, investors aren't buying those properties because it's so costly to redevelop them. They can't rent them for what it would cost. With building materials, the cost of materials, and some of these really over-regulated codes, which are just driving up the cost and making it unaffordable for our children to buy homes. And it's becoming a big issue. You talk to a lot of people, and there's a running joke, everybody's living in their parents' basement. Folks want to get out and buy their own home, but they can't find it and they can't afford it because of bad energy policy and bad policies when it comes to construction, and how can we build homes safe, reliable, and do development cheaper? And that's those are two of the big issues that I really want to see focused on going forward. And the other thing is healthcare. Obamacare, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, really just drove up the cost of healthcare. That's all it did. It didn't. They expanded Medicaid. But your policy, my policy, anybody that has a private policy, you pay to pick up that cost. So it's a huge tax increase on everybody. And the folks that want to sign up for healthcare and buy private on the exchanges, that's why the costs are going up, because they're paying that tax for the expansion of Medicaid. And we're not talking about covering people. They're talking about covering people that need Medicaid, people with special needs. And I obviously chair the Human Service Committee. I want to see people that need that coverage to get that coverage. But able-bodied workers need to get a job and be off of the Medicaid rolls. So that's going to be one of the focuses, is how do we bring down health care costs. The other is we need to do tort reform in this Commonwealth. Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia area is ranked worst in the nation as a judicial hellhole for these trial lawyers and for these frivolous lawsuits when it comes to health care and also the transportation industry. And what that means for you and I is your hospitals and your doctors and your nurses don't want to practice medicine in Pennsylvania. And the hospital networks are going to have to pay more for insurance, because if they do something called venue shopping, and it had been stopped years ago, and then our illustrious Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned it and now is allowing people. So if you have a case maybe in Carbon County or Schuylkill County, maybe a medical malpractice case, and the attorney files it in Philadelphia County, now why would you file that case in Philadelphia County when it happened in Schuylkill County? And look, everybody is entitled to their day in court. If there was a malpractice, you should be held accountable and responsible. But it's because the jury pool in the city of Philadelphia pays out in the nation the highest claims. So all they're doing is they're not looking for justice. They're not looking for to make sure that we're going to hold somebody whole for an issue. They're looking for a big payday. And the trial bar has pushed this for years, and right now it's driving up the cost of insurance, which is driving up the cost for hospitals. And one of the things that we're seeing now more than ever across our state are what they call maternity deserts. Mm-hmm. Did you think that we would have this, right? In that hospitals are shutting down their maternity wards because of the liability, because they can't get liability insurance and they can't afford it. Meanwhile, young people that are having children are driving an hour, 2, 3 hours to have their child delivered. So we need to look at that. How do we make sure that we're getting more maternity wards out there? And everybody wants to talk about women's health. The left always likes to talk about women's health. Right. They never want to talk about maternity wards and babies being born. They always look at the other side of women's health. I want to make sure that women that are having children are going to have access to good care, maternity care, whether in Philadelphia or in Potter County or anywhere in between. We are an incredible state, the fact that we have these maternity deserts is unacceptable. So we are going to be working on some legislation. I know they're doing a study over in the Senate. We've been monitoring that, and maybe we can look through some stuff in the Human Service Committee and change the focus from the left on protecting women's rights, because we're all about women's rights, but really talking about what can we do to help women and young families that are having children. How can we make sure that those women have the health care that they need?
So you brought up those topics, the affordability, the housing, the health care, the tort reform, and the maternity wards. Is there any bills specifically that you want to flag that maybe the constituents should pay attention to when we come back to session?
So there was a package of bills that we introduced last session out of the Housing Committee to look at changing the UCC codes and not adopting the new codes. What happens is the new codes come out, and it's great because maybe there's a new material that we can use to build a home, right? But what that does, and it drives the cost up. So the builders, now they have to go get these new materials when the old materials were fine. And they keep changing, they keep setting the bar, a different bar all the time. And that just drives the cost of building up. My office in Weisport, the building was built in like the 1880s or 1870s. It's a very old building. Mm-hmm. It was a doctor's office at one time. It was apartments at one time. Now it's our district office. And that building has standing a long time. It was built a long, long time ago. So I know they continually to upgrade and want to change these building codes and everything else. And look, fire protection, making sure that we're building safe homes, but we are. But we need to look at how we address it. So that's some of the legislation that I have is before we adopt any new codes, we're going to look at the cost effectiveness of amending that. The maternity study, there's actually the study that's been done in the Senate. It's being done right now, and we're waiting for that to come back to see what we can do to try to help out with maybe some liability insurance, but also other ways that we can help hospitals to want to I think they want to deliver babies, but they just realize that they can't because of the cost. As far as energy, there's a whole slew of bills out there right now to increase it. Getting us out of RGGI was key. But we need pipelines. Years ago, they wanted to build the Pennies pipeline, and a lot of people up in arms, and folks over in New Jersey shut that operation down. They didn't build the Pennies pipeline. Well, guess what? We're paying more for energy now, right? We have to have a common sense way so we respect people's private property rights, but that we can build this infrastructure so we can have a growing economy and we can have safe homes, but people can afford to heat their homes.
I think that's a lot of good things to look forward to and a lot of things that people need to pay attention to because, again, at the bottom line, this affects their wallets, it affects their health care, it affects every part of their life, whether they realize it or not. That's what you're doing here in Harrisburg.
Yeah, I mean, and all these issues, you got to continue to push for them. And right now in the House, so we are in the minority, but we've been able to last year and the session before that be able to get some things through the committee that I chair, the Human Service Committee, to help Pennsylvanians out. And we want to look. We're willing to work bipartisan because everybody when those electricity prices go up, everybody hurts. When home heating oil prices go up, everybody hurts. When your utility costs go up for your water or for your sewerage bill, everybody hurts. So that's why we always support infrastructure projects for water and sewer projects in the county and trying to bring that grant money back. When we talk about infrastructure, that's also a key, is making sure that those things are operating properly. And so we're going to continue to push. We'll work with folks on both sides of the aisle, the governor's office, on anything that we can agree on and anything that we don't agree on. And it's not good for the folks in Carbon County. We're gonna push back as hard as we can on those issues.
So continue to fight for Carbon County. Is that the message for 2026?
I have always looking out for the people that I represent, and then also looking out for our region and looking out for the state and all the residents of Pennsylvania. Like every day, people want to get up they want to go to if they want to go to work, they want to have a good job, they want to travel on safe roads, they want their kids to be in good schools and be safe and come back and raise their family, have a good job, set a little bit aside for the future, maybe go on a vacation. And I think that's what we want for everybody. If they want to know that their parents, as they get older, are going to have access to good health care and be taken care of. They want to know that their children are going to be safe in their schools and in their community. And they want to know that if they're going to have children, that they're going to have access to good maternity care. So we're going to work on all those issues as we have in the past and continue to push and go forward.
I think that's a good way to wrap up this episode. That's a lot to digest for this one, and then we'll continue to follow these topics and more in future episodes of Talking with Doyle.